Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Samantha and I make EUC and mental health content. I'm also a psychiatrist living and working in Christchurch, New Zealand. Today, I'm going to discuss the ethics of pain and suffering. As usual, please stay and watch until the end if you're interested, but please leave if this topic is too boring or too heavy for you. My content is not very exciting, but if you want to listen to a story or learn a thing or two about life, then you have come to the right place. Recently, a colleague and I got into a debate about the treatment of low mood and anxiety during the luteal phase of a woman's menstrual cycle. During this time, there is a sharp drop in estrogen levels that can lead to mood swings, and I often prescribe various medications to help mitigate these effects. However, my colleague, who was also a psychiatrist, disagreed with my actions. He believes that mood swings during this time are common and natural, and that I should normalize it instead of medicalizing it. In his practice, he was more inclined to refuse to prescribe medications for hormonal mood swings, but rather resort to education and reassurance instead. In the end, we agreed to disagree, and the conversation ended abruptly without a satisfying conclusion. He left me with some unanswered questions that I have never thought of asking myself or my patients, such as, how much pain and suffering should a person endure? What is my duty as a doctor in relieving pain and suffering? And also, was I wrong in helping my patients? To be fair, the romanticization of pain is not new. The Catholics believe in redemptive suffering, which is when a person's pain takes on a holy purpose when it is likened to the pain of Jesus Christ when he was crucified. In 1758, Benjamin Franklin wrote in his publication, The Way to Wealth, that there are no gains without pains. Jane Fonda later popularized the phrase, no pain, no gain, in the 1980s to motivate people through challenging aerobic workouts. This was also coupled with another phrase, feel the burn. There is also a common belief that pain builds character and empathy. Studies have shown that sustained power and privilege can change a person's brain structure to be less sensitive to other people's inner lives, including their pain and suffering. When viewed from this perspective, pain is not necessarily a bad thing, as it can lead to meaning, purpose, and growth. In contrast, the lack of pain can lead to callousness and narcissism. However, in his seminal 1995 paper, the physician Eric Castle noted that there is a distinction between pain and suffering, and that doctors cannot ignore the latter. Castle argues that suffering results from a person's projection into the future, especially if they can anticipate further pain, further loss of health, further loss of social status, further loss of functionality, further assaults on one's own identity, further disruption to family life, and further uncertainties. One can experience suffering even in the absence of pain, such as upon receiving the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or ALS, whereby both conditions are ultimately terminal and degenerative despite the absence of any noxious stimuli. One can also experience suffering in the absence of any known pathology, such as the normal comings and goings of period-related pains and mood swings. If suffering results from one's projection into a bleak future, then the remedy would be to terminate that future with suicide. We have known for a long time that those who suffer from chronic disabling pain are at an increased risk of depression and suicide due to a loss of hope. In general, people are more receptive to pain if they have control over it, and therefore, relieving it goes a long way in reducing suffering. You may be surprised to learn that the ancient Hippocratic Oath and the modern 1948 World Declaration of Geneva, which is widely administered in American medical schools, make no mention of pain and suffering. The medical oath I took 16 years ago in New Zealand does not mention relieving pain and suffering, except to carry out my duties with compassion and moral integrity, while safeguarding a patient's dignity and human rights. Perhaps it was taken for granted that safeguarding someone's dignity involves relieving their pain and suffering. Still, it remains open to interpretation because the reliance on medications, even when it improves one's quality of life, may still be seen as undignified, especially if their pain and suffering can be alleviated independently through other means. The normalization of pain and suffering brings up the uncomfortable question of power and inequality. In a massive study published in 2022, researchers looked at the outcomes of 1.3 million patients and found that female patients who were treated by male surgeons suffered a 32% increase in mortality within 30 days of the procedure when compared to female surgeons. Female patients are also 16% more likely to experience post-operative complications and 11% more likely to be readmitted to hospital after the procedure when they are operated upon by male surgeons. Interestingly, male patients experience similar death and complication rates regardless of the sex of the surgeon. The researchers concluded that this disparity is not due to technical skills, but rather communication styles and unconscious biases. The researchers pointed out that male physicians in primary care are more likely to underappreciate the pain reported by female patients, which can lead to delayed treatment and more adverse outcomes. Although it is not something the study addressed directly, male surgeons are likely to underappreciate pain reported by female patients, thus leading to higher mortality and morbidity. The normalization of period pain has also led to a delay in diagnosing and treating endometriosis by an average of 7 to 8 years. During this time, women often conceal or downplay their symptoms to avoid stigma or invalidation, which not only affects their quality of life, but can sometimes lead to scarring, adhesions, and infertility. Women are also encouraged to use euphemisms to conceal menstruation, which further reinforces the idea that menstruation is dirty and shameful. Euphemisms such as that time of the month, Aunt Flo, or Shark Week are commonly used to avoid embarrassment or create inside jokes. But should we take all reported pain seriously? The American Psychiatric Association believes that an estimated 3 to 12% of people treated with opioids for chronic pain will develop an addiction or abusive use pattern with negative consequences. Many doctors are reluctant to prescribe opioids such as OxyContin or oxycodone for this reason, even though patients are often left with severe pain and disability. In two separate studies comparing the disability-adjusted life years, which is a metric used in public health to quantify the burden of disease, I found that those with chronic back pain are far more debilitated than those suffering from an opioid use disorder. Although this alone does not justify the liberal use of opioids, it does throw into question the conservative position many doctors adopt to prevent addiction. Unfortunately, addiction is highly stigmatized in society, and public health care is often poorly funded to treat it. More importantly, doctors who prescribe opioid painkillers are subject to intense scrutiny by medical regulatory bodies, which discourages their practice. Doctors practice defensively by refusing to prescribe opioids to avoid medical legal troubles. There is also evidence to suggest that opioids may not be more effective than non-opioid painkillers in the treatment of chronic pain, especially when used beyond 12 months. Without the development of more effective painkillers and infrastructure to manage addiction, doctors are forced to make an impossible decision between taking their patients' pain seriously or turning them away. When faced with these moral dilemmas, they project their fears, insecurities, and discomfort onto patients by labeling them difficult, annoying, or unreliable. However, what is even more insidious is the shifting culture of pain and suffering due to herd mentality. In China, overworking is normalized by the 996 culture, where workers are expected to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. up to 6 days a week. It is commonly regarded as a form of modern slavery that is considered a severe health hazard. In Russia, a large swath of the population has been desensitized to the pain and suffering of Ukrainians due to many years of media censorship and nationalistic propaganda. In America, identity politics have taken hold of people that they now view those with opposing political views as an existential threat. Rather than compromising or working towards a common goal, many Americans now revel in the pain and suffering of others. In Japan, roughly 1.5 million people live as hikikomori, which is a severe form of social isolation where a person retreats into their rooms for decades without seeing anyone. This is viewed as a strategy to cope with the pain and suffering of living in a hyper-competitive society. And a similar phenomenon is being observed globally in South Korea, Singapore, Europe, and North America. Women everywhere are choosing to have fewer children to avoid the pain of labor and the suffering brought on by the uneven distribution of childcare responsibilities perpetuated by the patriarchy. All of this is happening in a backdrop of an energy crisis, AI bubble, and pending climate catastrophe, which leads to widespread empathy fatigue and cynicism. It is no wonder that we tune out the pain and suffering of others to focus inward as a form of self-care and self-preservation. Another perplexing and controversial phenomenon is the creation of suffering due to excessive or misplaced comfort. History is replete with examples of human innovations that were initially thought to reduce suffering, only to be proven gravely wrong afterwards. A prime example of this is the widespread use of narcotics such as morphine, heroin, or cocaine in the late 19th and early 20th century in cough mixtures that not only led to withdrawal symptoms, but in some cases, overdoses resulting in deaths. A more contemporary example is the obesity epidemic caused by an abundance of hyperpalatable food that is high in calories but low in overall nutrition. It is easily accessible at local supermarkets or through food delivery services. Rather than preparing meals from scratch, we now rely on ultra-processed foods to save time, even though it could lead to health problems. And this leads me to the use of smartphones, which is widely considered a modern convenience, but is now believed to contribute to sleep problems, backache, and mental illness amongst children and adolescents. The famous social psychologist Jonathan Haidt coined the term the anxious generation to describe the generation of young people who suffer from anxiety due to an over-reliance on smartphones, which supplanted in-person human interactions. Some researchers now believe that smartphone use is associated with the decline of dating and sexual activity in young people. Some have even compared smartphones to cigarettes, whereby they both offer short-term pleasure in exchange for long-term suffering. While cigarettes cause lung cancer, smartphones cause brain rot. Australia recently banned the use of social media for children under 16, and Britain is now following suit. We even have battery-powered exoskeletons to reduce the effort associated with walking, which will no doubt benefit some when used for a short period, but can create a dangerous dependence if used daily. Our desire for comfort and convenience knows no bounds, and it's not entirely clear if this will lead to more or less suffering in the future. So how much pain and suffering are humans supposed to endure? How do I know if my patient's misery is legitimate and treating it today won't lead to more problems tomorrow? What do I do? Cindy, are you sure about this? I said. Yes, I'm sure, she replied with conviction. You do understand that this pill can cause significant side effects, I replied. Well, how long does it take for me to come off it if I can't tolerate it? It could take weeks if you're lucky, but some people take months. Why? Because of the withdrawals? I nodded. What would you do if you were me? Cindy asked. I took a deep breath and said, I will take it. Why? Cindy persisted. I guess I don't have much to lose if I was feeling miserable the way you do. Besides, I'll always wonder what could have happened if I don't take it. And I don't want to live with that burden. I agree, Cindy smiled. For a while there I thought you were trying to talk me out of it, she continued. No, that's not what I meant. I was trying to tell you that the medication is not a permanent solution to your problems, I replied. Like what? I can't take this forever? You can, and some people do. Except I have not solved your problems now, have I? I have simply exchanged them for a different set of problems. Because now you have to put up with the side effects for the rest of your life, and coming off it will be a pain. Oh, bummer, Cindy said. Yeah, bummer indeed. But that's life, unfortunately. We don't solve problems. We merely choose which ones to put up with. After giving it a lot of thought, I realized that neither my colleague nor I was completely right or wrong because we couldn't foresee the future. Our action or inaction will inevitably generate a different set of problems that require further consideration. Maybe he was right to avoid medicating something he deems to be a normal physiologic process, and maybe I was right not to normalize the pain and suffering experienced by women. Fixating on the morality of our actions is pointless, since all we can do is act with the best information and intention today, and hope for the best tomorrow. My philosophy with patients was mostly driven by my own experience with some healthcare professionals who previously turned me away when I sought help. Not only was I angry and lonely, but I was also deeply inspired by the few who risked their careers to help me. I vowed never to treat my patients the way I was treated, but I admit this is a biased position that is both a strength and weakness. However, I can't change my past, and neither can I change how I feel about my patients. I will never undermine or normalize a person's pain and suffering, at least not if I can help it. As long as my patient desires my help, I will do my best. Doing anything less will only lead to moral injury, and this is a burden I would rather not carry for the rest of my life. And this is all I wish to say about this heavy topic for now. I'm afraid I don't have all the answers, except for my past, my feelings, my biases, and my human tendency to make mistakes. Doctors are not gods, and we cannot see through all ends. One day, I will be judged for my actions, but until then, I'm just stumbling along a forest trail trying to find my way home. Before I leave, I want to let you all know that I will be taking a break from writing my EUC for a week or two due to a minor surgical procedure. In other words, I won't be posting videos until I recover. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know whether you agree or disagree with my philosophy. Until next time, ride safe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!
What would it be like and would you want to see? If seeing meant that you would have to believe in things like heaven